and making my first nougat cake. I have a picture of that with me. And are we on?
Just a second.
In our little grocery store, we used to sell.
Oh, that's great.
We used to sell to the little neighborhood kids, and we cheat them.
Yeah, Mother bought a grocery.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, just start with the list,
Oh, can I hold it up, or can you see it?
No, I don't see it.
Okay.
Just don't look down that much when you're answering.
Well, I can't see without my glasses on. I wear glasses, by the way. Oh, we were.
Tell them how old you are.
No, I'm almost 23. I'm young. We were discussing our trips, all of our trips to Hot Springs. My goodness, we went every summer, didn't we? Just about. And our trip to San Antonio. Who was it? Did we go for any special reason to see anybody? I can't remember. And I can't remember why we went, but anyway, I remember we were walking down that boardwalk like thing, the river walk, and I got heat stroke. It was like 114 degrees that day. It was like the hottest day they'd had in the history of San Antonio, and we happened to be there that day, and I got heat stroke. And our trip to New York and Maryland to see Aunt Liz and Uncle Harvey. And that was the first time I ever went to a bar. And how old was I? I'm not going to talk about that. I was 14. I think I was 14. And I had somebody else's ID. And I used somebody else's ID. It seems like Susie gave me her ID. That's what it was. I didn't look anything like her, but anyway. And the band, I remember the one song that I can remember that the band played was a song called Boogie Till You Puke. It was horrible. It's a horrible song. I can't remember any other trips that we took together. Oh, of course, Germany, just last year when we three went, plus Jack. That was an experience I'll never forget. Never thought we'd ever get to go to Germany together. And got to meet Nina for the first time ever. The ones that supported us for all those years. And toured the countryside. It was beautiful. Of course, Chuck scared me to death driving on the Autobahn. I thought my life is, if I wasn't going to die in a plane crash, then I was going to die with Chuck driving on the Autobahn. But we made it there and back safely, and we had a great time.
What do you remember about going over to Nanny Papa's house in an early age? Do you remember anything?
Well, I remember at Christmas time when we went over to Nanny Papa's, and they used to tell me they'd close the doors to the kitchen and the dining area and tell me that the little Santa Claus was coming, and the little elves were helping him get all the presents on the tree. And excuse me, I used to be scared. I hope you can edit that out. I used to be scared of the little elves because I would hear.
Go on, start over.
Oh, okay.
Don't say edit. Just keep going.
I had to burp. First thing one thing that I remember at Christmas time over at Nanny and Papa's house, and they would have the doors closed between the kitchen and the dining area, and either Mom or Nanny, I can't remember, would say that Santa Claus and his elves and his little helpers were in there putting up all the presents, and I used to hear noises and footsteps, and I remember one time I got real scared because the footsteps came right up to the door, and I ran into the other room. I was scared of them. That's the one thing I really remember about it's Christmas time at their house. Yeah, and they used to have this little bowling set, these little plastic pins and these plastic balls. And Chuck and I would always bowl. And that little red thing that they had, that little red round, like a footrest, and put it on its side and get our stomachs and be rolling on it. And I have that now in my house. Yeah. We don't have it anymore. Did we get rid of it? How sad. The Christmas time was always real special to me. Being able to be over at Nani Papa's house. And then coming home. And then getting up early in the morning. Oh, I know, sleeping, that it was that same night that I thought the elves were at Nani Papa's house. That night I was sleeping in bed at home and I thought the elves were all over me. I thought they were coming in and trying to get me in my bed. I remember that. It was that same night. Billy's busting up. This is funny. What else?
Okay.
I'm gonna kick your butt.
It was on tape. Go ahead.
Another thing at Christmas time, that in the morning when Chuck and I would go in to the living room and there would be our little grocery store, and I loved that store. I had power because it's like I owned that store, and I sold all the little. We had a little miniature of everything, little tiny box of Tide and little things of Hershey's chocolate, and everything was little miniature. And there's a real cute picture that Chuck's showing right now of us. And
Do you remember
we
what
sold.
you did to me with the book and the pillow? Why
Um,
don't you tell that little story?
I really can't remember very much of it, but I do remember Chuck and I we were just pillow fighting, and I hit him so hard in the back. I must have just hit the right spot in the back of his neck, and he passed out. And he scared Mom to death. And I felt bad for a while. I thought I was going to be in trouble. But I didn't really get in trouble, I don't think. I can't remember. But that was my husband. Snidel comment. Can we get him on tape? Little Nougat, my little baby kitty, and then I found out I was allergic to cats, and we had to give her away to Linda Bell, and she won prizes and stuff after that. Won ribbons in cat shows, and she was the fattest cat you've ever seen. She was huge. She weighed like about 13 pounds, didn't she, at one time? And her name was Nougat. And that reminds me of the first time I made a nougat cake. Did I already say that? First time I made a nougat cake, and have a picture of that. Me in my bathing suit. That's probably the first and last time I ever wore a bikini. And Nani was awful proud of me for making that nougat cake, and Mom. And I was too, and I promised Nani I'm going to make one again sometime soon.
What about some of the crazy things when you moved out for the first time?
Well, when I moved out of the house for the first time, it was after high school, that summer after high school. It was in July, I believe. With Chuck, we moved down on Blackwood into a duplex. Didn't have too many things, it's kind of empty. Of course, never had anything in the refrigerator. But let's see, I was working at the yogurt shop, but I was still working at Pizza Inn too, I believe, at first. And then I finally quit pizza and worked at the yogurt shop. Was the manager of the yogurt shop. And I remember, one thing I do really remember is Chuck getting his laser disc. And we sat and watched movie after movie after movie all the time. And we had parties all the time. Especially me. Poor Chuck. Had to put up with living with a 18-year-old and all her crazy ways. And then after that, he moved down to Vantage Point, and I moved into Mesa View, and Lori moved in with me, and Lori Kearney, who's Shelley now, who's having her second child next month. Well, she got pregnant, and I kicked her out because she was an idiot, and I want that in. I want that statement known. And then Tammy Zini moved in for a while, and we never paid our rent, so we got evicted. And in between this time is when I met Billy through Kevin Leonard, and I asked Kevin if he would help me move, and he said he didn't have time or something, and said, why don't you call Billy up? You know, he'll help you. Why don't you call Bill Ely? Why don't you call the Grizz up? So I was brave enough to call him and ask him if he'd help me move, and he helped me move, and back home to Mom. And that night we went out to a concert, went to see Elixir at Rick's Armory, and that was our first date. And from then on we started dating and seeing each other every day, just about, bothering Mom. I remember coming home one time, I don't remember if it was that same night or not, or before then, and I told Mom that I had met the man that I was going to marry, and I was right. Do you remember that? And I was right. Anyway, so we got married that that was in April, and we got married that next May. That's about all there is to say about that. Years. Talk about St. Mary's.
Go ahead.
We can talk about a little bit about St. Mary's. Got in trouble first couple years in St. Mary's. Didn't really want to be there, but I'm glad I stayed. I made the second honor roll my junior and senior year. Straightened up a little bit with the help of Mrs. Hennis and Miss Maplestone. And Billy, shut up. And
Start over, please. Y'all really can't.
we can talk a little bit about St. Mary's. I didn't really want to go at the beginning, but I went, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I stayed there. I got in some trouble in the first 2.5 years, and straightened up a little bit my junior year with the help of my band director, Mrs. Hennis, and my American history teacher, Miss Maplestone. Two really special people. I loved band. Band was probably really what kept me there those first few years. Had a lot of great times in band. Met a lot of nice people and crazy people. And let's see, we went on 2 trips. We went to down to Mardi Gras in New Orleans, and went to Washington, D.C. in my senior year, or my junior year. No, it's my junior year. Had a great time, except we stayed in this horrible place called a hostel, and every night we were there, all you could hear were police sirens and people being murdered out in this alley behind us, and there were roaches in that room. It was a horrible room, but it was cheap, and we rode a bus all the way to Washington, D.C. That's a long trip, but anyway. Band was very special to me, and I'm glad that I was in band. I'm glad I learned to play the drums. Of course, I don't play anymore. I just sold my snare drum this year, right before Christmas time, to a woman at work for her son. And I made, at St. Mary's, I made the second honor roll twice, my junior and senior year. And my academic record wasn't the greatest, but I was very good in my math subjects. I always made good in my math subjects. I had a good math teacher, Mrs. Soroy, who was very nice to me too. A lot of the teachers were nice to me. I just wasn't nice to them. And one thing that really happened at school that I'll always remember is one day I was in biology class with Mr. Johnson. Couldn't stand the man. Still don't like him. And I got a call into the office. So I went down to the office, thought I was in trouble again for something. And Sister Elisa, who was the principal at the time, told me somebody was outside, right outside the front steps there to see me. And couldn't imagine who it was. I thought maybe Mom was up there. And so I walked out, and there was Nani and Bye-Bye with this other man. And I thought, Lord, something's happened. And they walked over to this car where this other man was standing, and they said, look at this car, do you like it? Excuse me. And I said, sure, it's nice. And they said, well, get in it and look at it. We're thinking about buying it. And I thought, oh boy, they're going to buy a new car. And my nose is itching. So I got in it, and I looked around, and of course, first thing I looked at was the radio. It was crummy radio. I didn't say anything to them. Anyway, then I looked around at it, and they were talking to that man and everything, and so I thought it was a pretty small car for them. Probably be not as safe for them as the car they had. And then Papa looked at me. He said, well, do you like it? And I said, yeah, it's a neat little car. And he said, well, it's yours. And I thought I was going to pass out. I said, oh my God, you're kidding. And he said, no. And I could, I can't, I guess I probably went blank after that. I can't remember much. And I was just in shock. And I had to go back to class, and it was horrible. Here I had a new car, and I had to go back into class, and it was on a Friday. And it was April 18th. 1980. 1980, yeah. April 5th, 1980 is my junior year. I was 17. I had just turned 17 anyway. So I went back. Okay.